Reports, the founder, and I've got an exciting new series of shows that I started on the last one. We're calling it CEO Roundtables. The goal is to have some conversations with a group of CEOs that can come and help our audience of investors learn about not only the companies that they're running, but also some insights in the industry that will help investors in their search for other companies. So I brought Mark Kolebaba from Atomera on. Thanks a lot for coming on the show, Mark.
Well, thanks, Alan. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
You bet. And what I'm going to do, Mark, I'll give you a little rundown on sort of how I came about the CEO roundtable shows, and then I'll move into a little bit about the company I'm now the CEO of, and then we'll have a good chat about Atomera. I'm going to be able to do a screen share, so you'll be able to, folks will be able to follow along with what I'm seeing on my screen when we get into the Atomera stuff. Does that work for you, Mark?
That works really well.
Perfect. We're on about a 20-minute schedule, so we'll get right to her. Mark, what happened was not long ago I took my first step across the street, I guess, from a pure reporter to a somebody running my own deal. I'm now the president and CEO of a company called Alset Energy. It was an interesting way it came about that position. They were a sponsor of mine, my website. They ran into some problems with the old management wanting to leave, and they didn't do that at a very good time. And it was all over the costs of the claim blocks and the way that they were staked originally in one big large concession. Down in Mexico, if you break them up into multiple concessions, your sustaining costs are much less. The example is, market went from 1.8 million down to 300,000 a year, which is much more workable. And so when that all happened, the stock, of course, got hammered, and I wasn't looking very good as bringing them on as a new sponsor. But once I heard the whole story, I told the company that I wasn't going to dump them as a sponsor. In fact, I'd give them a deal. They hadn't paid me yet. I cut my rate in half, and I threw my hat in the ring to run the company and try to help it get out of the ditch it had gotten into. The company's into lithium, and I like the lithium projects. In fact, the guy that jumped ship was the one who convinced me that of the quality of the projects. I had seen a lot of companies going into lithium, but these guys were talking about the cost and the infrastructure around them. They weren't talking to me about their stock that much. They were much more interested in this guy was much more interested in talking about low costs and all this stuff. So I was very excited about that, and I said, I want to help you guys fix the company. And took a few weeks, and they decided to take me up on the offer, Mark.
It's a real feather in your cap too. It's one thing to get involved with a company in really great times when everything's going great, but it's another to get involved with a company during tough times. So, while somebody else is jumping ship, you seem to be getting quite involved.
Well, at the end of the day, Mark, it really comes down to projects for me first and foremost. And in the lithium space, as I've jumped into the seat here, I found out some really exciting stuff about the lithium space. I wondered why a lot of these companies that were jumping into lithium weren't really talking so much about about what Tesla was talking about, needing a North American source of lithium. And so I started to do my research and found that, well, one of the problems with the lithium brines in Nevada is they're fairly small, and there's water issues there. And so it won't meet the requirements that Tesla has for their vehicles. And now they've got this new power wall that they're putting in where you can use your solar energy and then have it stored in a big battery, lithium battery on the side of a wall. All of these things are going to need more and more lithium, but they don't have a green and close by source other than Nevada. And then you look to the central Mexican plateau, and that's the next source, and that's where our projects are. And so, it's a real goal of mine, Mark, to move these projects to the testing the chemistry, testing the viability of them with the drilling, and see if we can in fact meet that goal that Tesla has put for the industry. The big thing I couldn't understand was why, and a lot of it is because a lot of the companies have moved down to Argentina, which doesn't really fall into that criteria. So that's why they weren't talking a lot about this, Mark. But we, in fact, have one of those projects that might be able to meet that need. And that's what I'm after trying to determine and about the opportunity.
That's always an important part of these projects is location and making sure that you not only are in the right location, but having the right product that the end user can use.
Yep. And that's, you and me from the same camp, Mark. It all comes down to infrastructure. What's the commodity? How much is it going to cost you to get it out of the ground? Is somebody else going to pay you to buy that off you? Or are you going to become a producer yourself, right?
And you got to be quick. You
yep.
got to be quick with these things too, because some of these markets can be filled by, one or two or maybe three different deposits all of a sudden, and you want to make sure that you're quick enough to get to that point where you can be one of the producers that meets that demand.
Exactly. And that's another thing. I had the conception that there was a lot of lithium out there, and there is a lot of lithium out there, but markets like anything else, it comes down to economics. What do the numbers? Yep. Do you have? It's like you and I are from our background really is in diamonds, and from that background it's set a foundation of the kind of guys we are and how we run things. We kind of learned on the fly in the diamond business in Canada over the last 20, 25 years. I've been in it since the 90s, so have you. And I think that makes us different kind of managers, if you will. And that was another reason I wanted to bring you on, Mark, is we had a great conversation recently at there was a conference in Vancouver called the Metals Investors Forum. And at that conference, I spent the day talking or listening to presentations by other CEOs. And then after there was a dinner, and Mark and myself and a couple other CEOs, we were together and we started talking about how juniors go about marketing themselves and how they go about, talking about press releases. And Mark and I are of the like mind. And I think a lot of that has to do because of our foundation, Mark, in the diamond sector. Now I think it affects how I deal with the lithium company and you deal with your gold company. Do you see the same thing, Mark?
Absolutely. We report things because we want people to know the information, whereas other companies are afraid to report certain pieces of information. And I think a lot of that comes from the TSX Venture, because they want to report things in certain ways and scare people off. But I think it's important that people just get the information, and it has to come out honest and real, and they just need to know what we know.
Exactly. And we're going to talk about this because it's specifically interesting to Mark's company, Atomera, and some work that they've recently done is sort of how we got into this huddle after at the dinner and started really talking about this. And often in those kind of situations, Mark, I wish I had the opportunity for my audience to listen in on the conversation, because it isn't just important from the CEO looking out, it's also important for investors looking in at the companies that they're looking to invest in. And so I really think that this conversation is important, and it's in context of your specific work you're doing. So that's all why I wanted to put this show together today, Mark, to get you on here. So I think that's a good transition. What I'm going to switch over to, Mark, is I'm going to switch over to a screen share, and now the audience is seeing what's on my screen. and I've just pulled up your website. So why don't we start talking about Atamera? And don't forget, we're going to bring up that topic, Mark, about some unique work that you guys have done that may be cutting edge. It may be off its rocker, but we want to look at it. And so why don't you give us a little overview of Atamera?
Okay, a quick overview. Atamera is based out of Vancouver, but its entire work, all of its projects are based out of Washington State. So we picked up a fair bit of land, a lot of land, especially lately in Washington State. And the reason we're there is because Kinross has got a mill and Kinross has got an operating mine. And it's a high-grade mine. They're able to produce gold at a very low cost. And the real opportunity for us is that mine runs out of ore within 2 months, and there will be a mill sitting empty and needing and requiring ore. So we picked up a lot of ground. We're working within 3 to 8 kilometers of
Now,
the mill.
Mark, if that mill is like they run out of feed, would it be looking for feed, or would they potentially want to sell it at a discounted price?
Well, the way I see it, there is no. It's not an asset. Without ore, it's not an asset. It's a liability because it has an environmental cleanup attached to it.
Okay.
So without ore, it's really not worth anything. It's just a liability. And what Kinross has said to the community is they're going to keep it on care and maintenance for about 5 years or so. And in the meantime, try to find something that will feed the mill or find other companies that have ore that want to do toll milling.
Okay, so that's so that's sort of we're going to set the stage here for my audience, Mark, and that's sort of you've got the mill in close proximity. Now let's look closer at Atamera's specific ground and why you guys think that you've got something high grade and something that could be exciting to investors out there.
Yeah, when we come into these areas, we arrived on the scene probably late 2012, and we started looking at the geology. When we start picking up ground, we don't like to look at it and say, well, where did the last company leave off? We look at it and say, what can we do differently here? Do we have any new ideas? And that was particularly easy in Washington State because nobody had actually explored in this region since about the 1990s. So it was really wide open for new ways of interpreting data, but more importantly, new ways of looking at the geological models. And that's really what we've been able to do.
So it's your classic go into an area that's been worked historically and look at it with a new fresh pair of eyes, but look at it in a overall a big picture sort of, let's take another look at this thing.
Exactly. And having a mill there, that just changes the risk profile of the district entirely. Because one, we know it's a mining district. Two, we're not doing greenfields grassroots exploration. We're doing brownfields. I mean, we're working around existing mines, and that really does reduce the risk.
Okay, and so on your ground now, there's been historical work, there's been recent work, there's been and you've got some work upcoming, right, Mark? Why don't you give us a rundown on that?
There's historic work, but we haven't really seen a lot of the historic work. Most of that data is held by Kinross, and they haven't really been too open with their data. But we've done a lot of the recent work, and what we have, we've come into that area saying, okay, we're looking for something that's 2 or 3 million ounces in size. But even if you find something that's 200 or 300,000 ounces, that's still a win because it will go to that mill. It's a very hungry mill.
And by the way, Mark, I think that the transition is happening in the industry where companies aren't just looking for that X number of ounce question. They're also now looking at, can we make money at this thing? If it's smaller, the question is, can we make money on these?
You got it. And in saying that, we're all about high grade. We don't care about finding a sub-gram or gram per ton deposit. We're looking for something that's high grade because we want to be able to permit a mine that is an underground operation, a very small footprint. We don't want to be trying to develop some big open pit complicated situation where it's going to take you 10 years. We want something that can be permitted within 18 to 24 months, small footprint, close to an existing mill.
Okay. Okay, so now on your effort to find that high grade, Mark, what work have you done, and what are you finding that's got you all excited? Because we had a great conversation, and I know
Yeah.
you're excited.
Well, there's a few things that we've been doing. One of the things, having a new model, we've gone out and remapped the geology, and that sounds like a pretty benign event, but it's actually been a very big thing. When you put on the right
Hey,
pair of
Mark,
glasses,
before
you
you
look
get
certain.
into that, I want to make a point about that benign stuff.
Yep.
We have for a long time, there's been a sort of a mentality of investors out there about exploration. We got to
Yep.
go back to the grassroots. We got to go back to the basics of what this stuff makes sense. Do as much work as you can before you go spending a lot of money, because otherwise your share structures get blown out of whack, and you're stuck. And so I'm a big fan of that benign work, Mark. It's how we find stuff, and I'm trying to
It's
find the
how we find
companies
stuff.
before everybody else does.
And there's been a real mentality of, if you're not drilling, I'm not interested. And I think that's changing now. People, we can afford to go out and drill, but what we can't afford to do is we can't afford to go out and miss. So you need to do all of these things. You need to map. You need to do a lot of soil sampling. I mean, we're out soil sampling on a 50-meter grid. Imagine that. Like we're trying to detect structures that are important mineralizing structures, and we think we understand these
Which
things.
is for somebody who's chasing high grade. You need to understand those structures, because that's what helps guide you as you go to depth to look for that underground high grade.
Exactly right. So, we're looking for a deposit that's at depth and it's blind. It's not sticking out of the ground here. So the only way we can tap into that is by sampling detailed enough so that we hit these structures. And these structures are like a conduit where elements can bleed up from the deposits, and we can start to see the gold, the copper, the arsenic, and all these different things we're looking for. And without the structures, we don't see a lot. So we're actually not looking for the deposit. We're looking for the structures that tap into these deposits. And it's working for us very well so far.
Now you've got you've got a good picture on the structures. You've done a good
Yep.
amount of sampling on tight grids, so you're really trying to vector in on what you're shooting for there. Now, Mark, let's get into this conversation about some interesting work that you've had done recently, and then I can give you some confirmation there about why it's interesting to me as well. So you know what I'm talking about. Why don't you get into it a little
Yep.
bit there, Mark?
For sure. Yeah, we were approached by a contractor, or not even a contractor. These are developers, guys developing a new exploration technique, a geophysical technique. And it's not commercial. And they approached us and said, well, we really like what you guys are doing, and we like the fact that that deposit style would be something we think we could see with our methodology. And I said, that's interesting. And he said, can we fly it at no cost to you? It'll be on their bill. And I said, yeah, absolutely. So I gave them the coordinates, and they went out and flew it. And I have to admit, I didn't expect much, because if you're not paying for it, you don't usually get much for it. And several months later, these guys came back last May and said, we flew your ground, and we've got a number of anomalies. And I said, well, at this point, why don't you tell me more about what kind of anomalies and the data? And what they developed is an airborne AMT system, audio magnetolarium.
Yeah, I know it's hard to say.
I can't even say it. But what it is that they're looking at the ultrasonic frequencies that come off of these different.
So it's like you're zapping it with a sonic wave, and then how it rebounds back gives you some sort of anomaly, right? Something like that, right?
Exactly, and it's more than I should even understand it. But what I do know is AMT is a acceptable and a well-known, documented, and well-used system.
But here's your difficulty. Okay, so you've got this.
They made it airborne.
You've got this difficulty because everybody in the industry would call this a bit of black box. Now, in fairness to black box, geophysics, when I first got into the industry, was kind of black box. So black box has a way, if it's good, of becoming industry stuff, but it can only do that if some people give it a chance. So, Mark, you gave the guy a chance. Now, there's a tie-in of why you didn't just run off, and why you added to your confidence about that guy's conclusions.
Yeah, so we have a property, we call it Oversight. And on the Oversight property, there's the old deposit called the Overlook. And we developed a very strong target based on soil sampling and mapping and some EM that we did. And he flew this area. He came up with a target that sits right over top of Overlook, which we didn't give him the location, and he would have had a tough time finding that. And he had a second anomaly that he plotted right over top of our soil geochemistry. And to me, I mean, it's very anecdotal, but to me it says, okay, he found Overlook and he found our geochem anomaly.
Well, now, Mark, I really wanted to have this conversation with you, and I was glad we ran into each other, because another company that I do some consulting with was approached by the same guy. And I had been drilling I had worked for a company, and we had drilled about 80 holes on this structure in Red Lake called the Newman-Todd structure. It kind of goes southeast or southwest to northeast, and then it has a curve to it, a hinge. And he came to us. Now, I got to put this in context, because there's several other big structures and much better known structures, okay, that he could have picked. So he did the same thing. He ran his system over it. And I had been looking at that hinge zone, wanting to see that hinge zone drilled for a decade, Mark. The first time I saw it, I wanted to see it drilled. I didn't tell him nothing about it. I thought the guy was completely black box, but I said, let's see what it has to say. Sure enough, he went to the exact hinge zone. He didn't go to the east-west deformation zone that everybody knows about in Red Lake that goes from one side to the next. There's 2 mines on that structure, on that claim block. He didn't go there. He went right to that structure that I've been looking at for 10 years.
Yep.
So
it's the same thing with this. We didn't give these guys any information, and they even picked our two main structures. And they're saying Overlook and this new anomaly beside Overlook, they're saying those are once they suspect they were once joined together and faulted off now. And we're looking at them going, yes, that's exactly what we came up with. And it's really interesting that they came up with a very similar idea, but now, quicker than what we can do.
Now that's important for a couple of reasons. It's really important for Adamera and this other company that I did some consulting with, West Red Lake Gold. And why it's so important to get that out before the news is because you don't want people to think, well, this is confirmation bias or anything like that. You want people to understand how this tool works before you actually put any drill holes into it. And now West Red Lake is actually drilling into that, has drilled that target. I don't know what the assay results are. I'm as hopeful as everybody else. But Mark, why that's important and why we need to document that, and I want to commend you for the way you did it, is because that could be very important to our drilling as we go to depth, because it wasn't just giving us where in the structure to drill. It was telling us a story about what was going on at depth, which is very costly to do. So if you can then keep your costs down by using this tool, you want to be but the tricky part is how you communicate that. And that's where a lot of people in the industry will say, no, I'm not touching this. I don't want to report on this. But you, in fact, reported it, Mark. And the way you reported it is important for Adamera and for other companies in the industry and for investors that watch this space. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, look, this is not a confirmed method. It's not even it's not a industry standard. So it's how do you report it and say that we found some anomalies, we're going to drill them? Well, we still see it as black box, but we like the fact that it's actually found things that we also know about. So we're saying, okay, it's black box, but there's a lot of interesting data behind it, and there's a lot of interesting facts behind it. We're going to take it serious, and if we have other features like soil, like mag or EM, we're going to use that in the overall data package, and we're going to drill it. But when we report that, we basically have to say we We don't know if this is a proven method. It's not a proven method as far as we know, but we do like the idea of how it can potentially work for us. So we will use it as part of our toolbox.
And most companies would walk away from it. Why, Mark? Well,
because
and not only that, tell us why that's a bad thing too.
So the way it is nowadays, we have 43-101 reporting. We have to have a qualified person reporting on this. Well, we can't really get a 43-101 person to report on that because it's not proven technology.
Right.
The AMT is proven technology, but the platform that they're using to make it airborne isn't proven. So how do we report that? Well, what we did is we just simply put in the factual information that we know, that it spotted our geochem anomaly, but we don't know much more beyond that. And we say that in the news release. We don't know if this is. And the data's been qualified. It's been reviewed by a qualified person, but they can't review this technology, and it's going to take some investigation.
And as an investor, Mark, why do you not want your company to walk away from something like this? Just a hypothetical.
Well, I think, we put out 4 more anomalies since those came out from this system. These anomalies, we go out and map on these targets. We're now finding alteration. We're finding the overall structure. We're finding mineralization, at least over top of one of these targets. They're important for us to investigate. And why would you ignore information? Why shouldn't your investors know what you know as you're going out? Otherwise, they think if we don't tell them what we're doing, they have no idea, and they really don't understand our process of thinking. Now, are we going to drill one of these targets? Not on its own, but we would drill one of these targets with soil anomalies, with structure, with alteration, with other features, and then we take the black box out of it.
Well, one of those targets has been drilled, Mark, out in West Red Lake Gold, their hinge zone. They drilled 2 holes into it, and I know because I wanted to see them done, and I helped champion those holes. So I'm hopeful that
Were they successful?
I don't know. I think they hit the structure, which is ultimately what you're shooting for, because that's what's going to host the gold, right? But we'll see when the lab tells us. I got my fingers crossed, Mark, because I kind of banged the table about those targets, and not just those targets. That specific hinge zone has been a target I've wanted to see drilled for a long, long time. And the reason was, Mark, is if you go maybe 500 meters along that structure, we drilled about 80 some holes, and I think all of them hit, and almost about 50% of them hit 10 gram plus type intersections. The problem is we couldn't get a package where we couldn't get a right spot in the structure where there was some bending so that the rocks were well prepared for the gold mineralization. But that's why I sat there for 10 years wishing we had that property, because I didn't do any work for West Red Lake at the time.
So we do like that technology.
Yep.
We don't know if it works, but to make sure that we're not depending on something that is black boxed, we're also flying our own survey. So right now, today is our first day of flying. We're gonna, or earlier next week probably, we're gonna have a system on the ground, in the air, a helicopter-borne system looking at the EM and looking at mag, and that will just be more information that will help us make good decisions on targeting.
And that ultimately, Mark, is what this is all about. And that's what. If you can find tools that work, at the end of the day, it's called geoscience for a reason. We're scientists. We're supposed to think in a scientific fashion, and we're also running public companies, so we're supposed to think in a scientific fashion and communicate what we're doing to our shareholders.
It's very true.
So now, having said all that, now let's get to the important point about Atamara. Where are you going? Where are we looking for developments in the next little while, Mark?
So we've got some really good targets right now defined. We've got lots of data behind them, so they are good targets, and we could set out to drill these targets right now. But what we have decided to do is to step back and pick up a much larger land package and evaluate that land package with that same deposit in mind. So we increased our land package by about 7 or 8 times in that region alone, maybe even 10 times, and we have collected 4,000 soil samples across it. We have mapped it. We have a good understanding of the structure. We've got that AMT system flown over it. We've got interesting anomalies in places where we would hope to see it and where we had expected to see it. We also have now coming out a new survey. So we will put those targets together and get out in the new year and start drilling. We're not restricted by any seasonality in that part of the world. So we can drill January, February, March, any of those times zones that, those are typically tough places to drill in parts of Canada, but in Washington, that's going to be a really enjoyable thing to have all season drilling.
And another thing before you close off there, I also noticed that our old friend Yale Simpson has jumped on board. For folks that may not be, well, a lot of my folks should be aware because Exeter and Extore were picks that I had very, very early. In fact, Extore was a pick that I had as a spin-off of Exeter and followed them from day one right through to them being taken over. And so whenever Yale's involved with something, it always gives me a good feeling as well, Mark.
And he's not just taking on a board position. He's taken on the chairman position, and he was just up a couple of weeks ago, and he got a really good look at exactly what we're chasing and what we're doing, and he had a good feel for it. So I was really happy to hear his pitch on what he thought we were doing.
So, Mark, what's the story on the stock? How much stock you got out, and what's the market valuing you at these days?
We're a market cap of about 4 or 5 million, and we've got about 86 million shares out. We've got some warrants out there. I hope that we're not looking at doing any financings right now. We've got enough cash. We've got about $700,000. This airborne survey that we're going to do will set us back about 100,000 or so. So we've got enough cash to get well through this year and into next year. And when we come out next year, we want to have a very strong list of targets that are high priority targets.
Well, and there's something I want to also stress to my audience is that, drilling is all about finding what you're looking for. And these days, I think it's really crucial for companies to also be doing as much work as they can to make sure that they're not wasting money. Otherwise, their share structure is going to get blown out. In Atamera, you have a company with a very modest valuation, but a very talented team that's done a lot of work in a highly prospective area. And I'm really looking forward to having you on future CEO roundtables, Mark.
Great. I really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun, and I think it's a great idea for investors to hear the way we think about what we're doing.
Well, and Mark, now that I've become a CEO myself, it's I have I think a lot of things, ideas about how companies can promote themselves more effectively with less cost. This CEO roundtable is one effort, but I'm going to work on a CEO summit as well. And so once every 2 or 3 months, we'll get together. We can get together live. People can come watch it. We'll do a live stream of it. And by this way, we can get a much broader audience than just a physical conference. And so I've got some really unique ideas, and we'll keep collaborating as professionals in the industry.
Yep, I agree.
Closing comment. Give us a quick closing comment for my audience, Mark.
Well, we're really excited by what we're doing right now because we are in an area that's brownfields. It's a mining district, and we're doing a lot of things for the first time. No one's ever gone out and sampled on this density of sampling. No one's ever flown a MAG-EM survey. No one's ever done AMT. So no one's looked at this district since 1990. We're working within 3 to 8 kilometers of the mill, and we are really excited by that. And we're looking at high-grade deposits that will feed that mill. And in fact, what that mill was built for. So it's going to be very exciting in the next couple of months as we put that data out. We've been collecting data since July, and we're going to change the picture of this whole district very quickly.
Awesome, Mark. Thank you very much again, Mark, for coming on board. I'm going to let you go because I know you got another one to go to here, Mark, and I'll close things off. But I look forward to seeing you again as you get some more work done there. And and also when we do this CEO Summit in a few months.
Sounds great, and I wish you luck on your new position as CEO as well.
Thank you very much, Mark. You have a great day.
Care.
All right, folks.
Thanks,
so there you go, folks. It was a great guest in Mark Kolebaba. He's a very talented geoscientist that I've known for a long time. Really glad that I bumped into him at this recent conference because it gave me a chance to talk to him about his company. I also got a chance to talk to him about my company and what I'm doing and how I'm going about promoting things. And so it was a great timing. I'm glad I was able to have him on the show today. So on that note, I'm going to close things off. Before closing things off, I always have to say thank you to my sponsors. My sponsors make all of the work I do on the Alan Berry Report show possible. This is all brought to you partially by now Alset Energy, where I'm the president and CEO. I'm very proud and excited about that opportunity. I invite you to check out our new corporate presentation that we put up at the on the website at Alset Energy. That's ALSETENERGY.ca, and our symbol is ION on the Venture Exchange. My other sponsors include, I'm just going to get my list up there for you because I don't want to miss anybody. My sponsors include Nevada Exploration. By the way, Nevada Exploration was one of the people that were at this conference and I was talking to. So I'm going to get them on soon, and we're going to do a roundtable for Nevada Exploration soon. Their symbol's NGE on the Venture Exchange. They have some really interesting work that they're doing with groundwater to look for gold in all the areas that have never really been properly explored because they're under cover of sand and they're in the same kind of rocks as where all the deposits are. So they've got a really good story. Check them out. Also check out, or their website is nevadaexploration.com. There's NGE on the Venture. Another sponsor is Premier Gold Mines. They're PG on the Toronto Exchange. Look them up at premiergoldmines.com. They have an enviable portfolio of projects from exploration through to production in Canada, in the United States, in Nevada, and as well as in Mexico. And they are a mid-tier in the making as far as I'm concerned. Check them out at premiergoldmines.com. Sirius Resources is SOI on the Venture Exchange. Their website is www.sirios.com. They are drilling a very exciting project in Quebec, and they have drill holes pending near their hole 52. Very excited about that project. They tend to batch their results up and report them all at once, so I'm looking forward to that. Check them out. Sirius Resources, SOI on the Venture Exchange. Tarku Resources, TKU on the Venture. Their website is TARKURESOURCES.com. That's Tarku Resources. They're next door to East Main, up in Quebec, and a very interesting project. Check them out. TKU is their symbol. Tudor Gold, TUD is their symbol on the Venture. You can check them out at tudor-gold.com. And also look on my website at Alan Berry Reports. A couple shows down, or a couple posts down, you'll see the interview, the first of the series of CEO roundtables that I did with Ray Marks from Tudor Gold, and he did a great job telling us all about what's going on with that company. West Red Lake Gold Mines is another company that is a sponsor. Their symbol's RLG. They trade on the Canadian Securities Exchange. You can look them up at westredlakegold.com. And Wolfden Resources, WLF on the Venture. Wolfden Resources is their .com is their website. They've got an exciting base metal project out near in Manitoba near Rice Lake. It is my only base metal company that I have on my feet in my sponsorship. They've been around and really exceptional team there. Check them out, Wolfton Resources, WLF on the venture. So that's all my sponsors. That's the show. I also have to thank you, the guests. If you didn't show up, it wouldn't be worth doing these shows. And I really enjoy doing these shows for you. I think it is a benefit to you, the audience. I think it's a benefit to the company I now run in Alset Energy. And I think it's a benefit to all my guests as well. So you all have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.